we really saw this as an opportunity to bring back some impressive alumni to be able to talk about their firsthand experience and share that knowledge, share those lessons learned with students that very soon might be realizing that same thing. Maybe want to pay off some debt or looking at homes or cars or what name you. So without further ado, thank you for joining us. Bryce and Bri, you can take it from here.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited to be with you guys tonight and talk about budgeting and paying off debt. As Alex said, this topic is so near and dear and super fresh for us. We just finished paying off our debt in December. So we're just really excited to dive in. We hope this is a really impactful evening for you guys. And we're so excited to answer questions later. So make sure you jot those down. Just want to say thank you too to Stacy and Alex for inviting us to be a part of this. We're just so honored. We loved Morningside. We met each other and then we got married. So it was worth all the money at the end of the day, you know. So
Great education.
we loved our Morningside experience. So we're just really happy to be back and partnering with Morningside. But there we go. So just to go through kind of our agenda for the evening, we'll keep this really simple. We're going to walk through our debt-free story, how we achieved our $96,000 goal, and how you can do the same. But before we dive in too far, we wanted to give you a little bit about ourselves so you know who you're working with tonight.
Yes. And my name is Bryce. I grew up in a small town, Del Rapids, South Dakota. I played basketball at Morningside for 4 years. Bri was actually a dancer, and she danced at my halftime, and it's kind of cool. But while I was also at Morningside, I got my bachelor's in accounting, where now I'm using that in a CPA firm here in Omaha. Halfway through my CPA exams, and then I'm going to pursue my CFP exams after that.
And I am Bri. I grew up in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Like Bryce said, I was on the dance team while I was at Morningside. I graduated with bachelor's in advertising and graphic design, so a lot more creative than Bryce's. He's the more strategic one. And so I'm currently an art director at Swanson Russell. That's an advertising agency here in Omaha, and I'm also a freelance graphic designer.
We both hinted at it, but we live in Omaha. We've been here since graduation. And then our debt-free journey started December 2018. And this was actually right after our wedding. Like seriously, like so much after our wedding that we were doing our debt planning on the plane trip home from our honeymoon. Talk about like reality hit, because like
so romantic.
We were 7 days on a beach, and then like we had to go back to work, and then we had to like think about all this debt. So it was a lot, but fast forward 2 years, December 2020, we just celebrated debt free, and it's been well worth it.
Yeah. And you may be wondering what the money well is. While Bryce and I were on our journey, we were about a year in, we realized that, you know, we still had a year left and we were pretty overwhelmed, but we felt like there was a real big gap in our peers and in our circles, especially on social media, about money. We realized how taboo it was to talk about money. Around that time, we were actually in the process of downsizing our apartment, and people just thought we were insane because we were supposed to be off buying houses and doing adult people things. But we were making sacrifices for our financial goal. So if you're interested, we post quite a bit on the Money Well on Instagram, and you can check out some of our content there. So let's dive into our money story, the good and the bad, right? So this is us when it all started. Our debt-free journey started. We were having the time of our life. At our wedding, we were preparing to go live the American dream. I was planning to buy a big house and fill it with a bunch of kids and a bunch of nice furniture from Target and stuff like that. But we quickly realized that we owed $96,000. And this was all kinds of debt. This was student debt. This was ring debt, wedding debt, furniture debt, credit card debt, car debt. We were super overwhelmed. This was $96,000. Keep in mind, we had just graduated. We were on entry-level salaries, and our combined income was around $65,000 for the year at the time. So yeah, talk about a reality check. We were pretty scared. We didn't know how we were going to pay this off, but we knew that we had to do something about it. Like, this was very overwhelming. But luckily, around this time, we did some free personal finance classes and premarital counseling at our church, which honestly probably saved our lives because we learned a lot about finances, and especially finances in marriage. But this kind of set us up. And we learned about the struggle that a lot of Americans today are dealing with when it comes to their finances. We learned that 73% of Americans rank debt as their number one stress in life. Money fights are the second leading cause of divorce, which is pretty scary for people, young people like us who are in love and wanting a full life, full happy life. And 40% of workers today are expected to retire with less than 10,000 in savings, which is pretty scary. But on the flip side, we also learned that there's a path of success that we could choose for ourselves. So we learned that we could use money as a tool to create freedom and opportunities. We learned that in marriage, especially, we could be united and confident and at peace in our financial decisions as a team. And we learned that we could prepare for retirement and give generously throughout our whole life and not just wait until the last years of our life when we finally made it and we're wealthy. We learned that we could be generous even now.
Yes.
The other thing that we were starting to realize personally was there's this thing called the college grad checklist. And if you're a student, this is probably the most important slide of the whole presentation. I think we noticed it's both an internal pressure, but also an external expectation that comes from parents, friends, family members. I think we all just kind of assume that this is the next step for us, right? After we graduate college, we get on a 10-year student loan payment plan, we're making those minimum payments. Well, we also have to pay tens of thousands in interest if we get on that 10-year plan. Then, our parents start wondering, well, when are you going to buy a house? Aren't you going to settle down and finance a house? You finance some stuff to fill the house. You finance some cars. You finance a wedding. You finance some vacations. And if you don't know what I mean by finance, I mean you take out a loan or use a credit card. So pretty soon you've exhausted your income. You're super stressed out because you have all these payments. And the point I want to make here is that as college students coming out of college, you have an opportunity at this time to decide what kind of path you're really going to set yourself on. You can choose a path where you seek to build your life as quickly as possible. You can get into more debt and you can try to impress everyone around you and amass success for yourself. Or you can choose to do things that are smart for your situation and stop looking at the world around you. And that's kind of what we did. It didn't feel awesome at the time, but ultimately we decided that the college grad checklist was no for us. Mm-hmm. We actually, like I said, we downsized our apartment. We made a lot of sacrifices. A lot of people thought we were crazy, but we ended up achieving our goal. So this is one temptation that you might face.
Another temptation is I'll blank later. I'll do it later. And we actually face this. If you do the math, I graduated in 2017, but we didn't start until 2018, our journey. And that was because we're like, we'll pay it later. Like we don't make enough to like make a dent in this loan. Like we can't do that. Mm-hmm. So why do people say I'll do it later? It's mostly because it's inconvenient right now.
Right.
But we're all tempted to think that we'll get to this loan, we'll give to this charity once we make a certain amount of income. But like I said, you got to start now. And once you do, you'll start gaining momentum and it'll be well worth it in the end. And something we've learned, and it's actually a quote from Warren Buffett, is that the best time to do something was actually yesterday, but the next best time is today. So with that, I just want to encourage you guys all, if there's something you want to work towards, why not start at least dreaming about it today, putting things into place today. Mm-hmm. And a year will pass. Our time flies by.
Yeah.
COVID's been a crazy year, but mm-hmm. if you think it's just been a year since all this happened, maybe it's been the longest year of your life. Maybe it's gone fast. For me, it's gone by fast, and it shows me that if I do something today, a year will pass, and then we'll be that much closer to our goal.
Yeah.
And so in this, we realized that when we are debt-free, which we are now, mm-hmm. we can spend 100% of our money however we want instead of making any payments. And in that, we found power and we found freedom.
Yeah.
So what decision did we make? Obviously, we made the decision to sacrifice now in order to live a lifetime mm-hmm. of financial peace. But we saw this daunting task ahead of us. It looked scary. We weren't sure. Mm-hmm. It was kind of our first challenge together as a married couple. And but then we had to realize that we needed a bigger purpose, and that is how we found our why.
Yeah. So we sat down one day and wrote out our why. And this may look like a lot to some of you, but money is super emotional. Like, you don't think it is, you think it's very surface level, but there's actually a lot of depth to it and a lot of emotion that leads us to our decisions. So for us, we wanted peace in our marriage, seeking money wellness through a unified partnership. We wanted to release all of that stress and division that we saw in those stats that I showed you earlier. We also wanted to do this God's way. We wanted to align our finances first with God, and it's important to us. And lastly, we wanted to do this for generations. We realized that our life is incredibly short. We could spend our life amassing success and chasing our way up the ladder. But ultimately that would die with us, right? So we wanted to embrace delayed gratification to bless future generations and make a difference that would outlive us, because ultimately that's what a legacy is. And, that's the most powerful thing that we could think of. And that's our biggest dream, was that someday someone would say, well, I remember the Cooks and they did this, and, I admire that, and they made a sacrifice for me. So that's really what drove us. But to put it simply, we simply just don't want to live a normal life. We don't want to live a keeping up with the Joneses kind of life. We wanted to create a life that our future selves would thank us for. And I know you think you can do it later, but ultimately, like I said, the easiest time to start is right now in your 20s, or as soon as you can. So we're feeling amazing. Go team, right? We made this declaration. We're going to pay off our debt. Like, here we go. We're ready to go. Well, we didn't know exactly how to do it. We set up this big goal, and we thought, wow, we still have $96,000. We're all pumped up now, but we still have all this money. So I'm going to quickly walk you through the exact steps that we did in our journey. Our very first thing we did was we made our first monthly budget. And this helped us to calculate our debt payoff date, right? Because you have to have an end goal in sight. So we totaled up our debt. We had $96,000. After we did our first budget, we realized that we would have about $2,000 to $4,000 left over every month. So then we could calculate the number of months until $96,000 would be paid off, which is about 2 to 3 years. So that's step one. Step two, we had to get super disciplined, right? Because this is a long journey. We stopped getting into more debt. We had to set up an emergency savings to cover any kind of surprises that would come up. We created an estimated budget at the start of each month. Before our paychecks even came in, we made a plan for how we were going to spend them. We documented real-time monthly income and expenses. So every day when I went to the grocery store, I was putting it in the budget, how much we spent, or if we went to the gas station, just to constantly keep track of how much we were spending. And you'd think that that would be annoying, but it was actually empowering just to see that we were on track and reaching our goal. And then Bryce and I had to have money meetings once a week just to check in. Because like I said, it's super emotional. It can be very stressful. And we had to check in and say, how are things going? Are we staying on track? And lastly, this is the best part. We got to put all of our excess cash towards debt at the end of the month, which is the most empowering feeling ever. The last step here is staying faithful. So like I said, our journey was 2 years. That means we created monthly budgets 25 times. 25 times we looked at our budget and said, we are still in debt and this still sucks. But ultimately, we got to watch our debt fall by 2,000 to 4,000 every month. And these last couple tips are really important. We'll get to later on. But we also increased our income and we downsized our lifestyle to accelerate our pace as we paid off our debt. Those two things will help you move faster as you're moving towards your goal. And the result of this journey was that we paid off $96,000 in 25 months in December. So we celebrated. It was awesome. We had spent our whole marriage so far living this really lean, hardworking life. So we went out on a date and it was grand.
It's a good time. So you might be thinking, how did you actually do it? Well, I think it's pretty simple. We followed a zero-based budget and we used the Snowball Method. So now to everyone's favorite part, the budget. I know it's not that exciting, but I do want you to remember that no one really loves budgeting. We like the end results, but if you don't budget, are we connected?
Yeah.
But if you don't budget, you're never going to get anywhere with your money. So to keep in mind, I just want to say from our journey, we learned that you won't win with money by doing what everyone else is doing. So we are asking you to do the hard part and the steady work that few are willing to do. So what is a budget? A budget is a monthly estimate of income and expenses and a list of categories. A budget also is a written plan for your money. but we want to take it a step further, and we want to introduce you to a zero-based budget. And this is total income minus total expenses equals 0. Pretty simple, right? But when you do this, you actually assign every penny a purpose, and so that you can reach your goal as fast as possible. And I promise you, when you do this, you are in control and you're conscious and you're motivated in how you actually spend every dollar. And that's going to help you towards achieving your goals faster.
Yeah, so let's make a budget. So the whole purpose of this is that we want you guys to feel in control of your money. We want you to feel like you own your money, you know exactly where it's going, and you have a plan that can give you purpose and give you energy as you move forward. So we have some example numbers here for you. We're going to walk through this. Just for simplicity, we're going to assume that this is a single income household. And we're going to say that all of your taxes are already taken out, your investments and your healthcare. So let's just say that you are getting paid twice a month. It's $1,500. So at the top, we've entered our income. Next, we have our expenses section. Let's start with your needs. So you have to pay for these 4 things in red. It's going to be your home, groceries, your bills, your utilities, you got to keep, your heat on, your lights on, and you have to pay for your transportation because that gets you to your job. So we always prioritize what we call the 4 walls. And then if giving is important to you, we always keep that up at the top. Next, we move to the flex spending here, which is always a little bit controversial because you like to have these things. They make life great, right? But sometimes we can get a little bit out of control. So I put some example things in here, but you're going to have different flex spending to fit your lifestyle. And then lastly, we have the debt payments. And keep in mind, these should be your minimum payments. And I know I said minimum payments are bad earlier, but just bear with me for now. Make sure you only put your minimum payments in your budget. So now that we have all of our expenses, let's add them up and see where we're at. Oops, so we're actually $275 over budget. That's not good. Which is kind of tough because we like all these things, right? We want them to be a part of our life, but pretty soon $275 every month turns into thousands on your credit card by the end of the year. And that gets you further away from your goals. So we have to figure out what we can do here to get us back to that zero-based budget where that equals is 0. So let's trim a couple things. Let's see if we can take maybe $50 out of our groceries. Maybe we buy some store brand products a couple times a month, make sure we're buying produce that's in season. Maybe we can shop a little bit less this month. We can maybe not buy that concert ticket for entertainment, cut out $100, and then maybe we can just eat out just a little bit less. So this brings us to a zero-based budget, and that means that every dollar is accounted for. We're not going to go into further debt, which is awesome. However, like I said, this is still just minimum payments. So this is actually still costing us years of peace and thousands in interest. So we want to hack the system here. We want to see how we can pay this off faster, right? So ultimately what we decided to do was we were going to try and get more income and we were going to try to reduce our expenses. And I just want to say up front that this isn't a sustainable kind of budget. This is just a short-term, stay focused kind of budget. But ultimately, let's see if we can get a side hustle of $500. Maybe we can cut out our shopping for this month completely. Maybe we can cut out entertainment just for a little while, and then we'll actually reach our goal sooner. So the result of this is we have $1,000 left over now. And that $1,000 could go a long way. Could you imagine if tomorrow you had $1,000 in your account, which many of you might right now with all the stimulus coming out and things like that. But let's see if we can actually use this towards our goal, right? So yeah, this is a reason to be excited. So I clean this up now. We actually move our debt killer funds into our budget, right? So we don't want to see that there's any dollars left over. We want to see that every dollar is accounted for and that we truly have a zero-based budget. Every dollar is given a purpose. The reason we want to do this at the beginning of the month is so throughout the month when there's temptations coming up, we just keep in mind that those dollars are already accounted for and they're going towards our goal. Next, now that we have our budget set aside, we want to talk about the debt snowball method. The debt snowball method is a debt reduction strategy where you pay off debt in order of smallest to largest, gaining momentum as you knock out each balance. When the smallest debt is paid in full, you roll the money you were paying on that debt into this next smallest balance. So as you saw from our debt slide, we had debt in all kinds of directions. We had credit card payments. We owed the government our student loans. So we had all kinds of websites and all kinds of people to report to. So it was very important that we got on a plan for the order of priority that we'd be paying these off. And so this is just a visual of what the snowball method looks like. As you can see, you make minimum payments all the way across, but when you have excess, you put it intentionally towards the smallest one until it's paid off. And eventually that rolls into one big payment that you're making towards your final loan.
Yeah, so just to bring this into real life, this was our list of debt when we started, and
Still gives me PTSD.
we almost couldn't fit it on the screen. We almost had to go multiple screens. But with it, we realized that we heard of the snowball method and we wanted to give it a try. So what do? We organized it, sorted it by amount. This is what Bri is saying, and the whole point of the snowball method is that I still remember from this day, the first month we were able to, I think, pay off the first two, almost the third one, just within a month. And with that, those three minimum payments are no longer applicable. Those loans are no longer with us, and now we can focus on just the few that we have left. So that's the whole point: is one's gone, two's gone, three is gone, and eventually you'll get halfway down the list, you'll get all the way down the list, and you're making these big payments towards just this one loan. And I'm telling you, at the end, you just want that loan out of your life. You want Great Lakes, Navient, Nelnet. You don't want that to be a part of you anymore. So it's I think it's definitely worth doing, and it was a lot of help to us.
Yeah. A lot less overwhelming when you're looking at those loans that are only a couple $100 versus like $16,000, which was that most expensive one down there. So, it makes you feel like you can do it. It's more doable, more attainable. And then you just pretend like the $16,000 one isn't there until the very end when it's much lower after making those minimum payments. So now that you have the cash from your budget and you know the order that you're going to be making your payments, there's a few other things you should keep in mind. When we talk about debt, a lot of people ask us, well, when am I supposed to invest? And how am I supposed to, pay for emergencies? Shouldn't I have a savings? And when should all of that happen? So we have a few priorities that we want to walk you through, starting with saving an emergency fund, which I think is actually the most important thing for students. We think that you should have at least $1,000, but ultimately decide what's reasonable for you. But especially for students, my sister recently graduated college, and the first thing I told her to do before she went out and tried to crush her debt, or before she went and invested in Robinhood, was she saved up $1,000 just to protect herself and just to prepare herself if anything were to happen.
Yeah, and that's very wise, and it's hard because when you're coming out of school, you're starting at the way bottom, and it takes time to build everything up. You want to, max out your IRA and for investing. You want to pay off your debt. You want to buy a house. You want to do all these things, but you can only do so much with the money that you're given.
Right.
And we're a few years out of college, and we're still experiencing we can't do that yet because we had to do these other things.
Yeah.
So the first priority is the emergency fund. $1,000, we think that's enough. One, because most accidents, as long as you're insured, your deductible should be less than $1,000. So that would cover, in the case something bad does happen. But also that $1,000, it depends on, kind of your living situation. Bri and I, we're in an apartment and we don't have any kids. We have a cat, but not that bad. So if you had kids or a house, you might want to bump that up, obviously, because those things bring greater expenses. So the second priority, as I mentioned on investing, we didn't want to stop investing altogether. But we didn't invest all that much. What we did was we invested the company match.
Yeah.
And most companies say like a 3% match. So you invest 3%, they will match it. And the reason we want this to be a priority, like you have to do it, is because it's free money. If you invest $100 a month, they're giving you $100 a month. You don't think that might not be that much, but it turns into $1,200 a year, and then it's compounding as well. So we definitely think that is the next priority. And then lastly, we want you to get super focused and attack your debt. And it's going to help you if you do the first two, because you feel secure that you have some savings in your bank, and then also you feel okay that you're getting your company match. So this kind of gives you clarity. It gives you an ability to focus on your debts and really attack them to get them out of your life.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming in for a close here on the things we have prepared for you. We want to leave you with a few final words of advice, a few final takeaways that you should remember. So the first thing is, keep in mind budgets equal results. There's a big temptation not to even think about budgets, to think there's another way around it, but ultimately you want to control your money. You don't want your money to control you. You want to have the most freedom and flexibility possible, and budgets actually empower you to do that. So we will explain more about budgets a little bit later. We have a good tool for you to use. The second thing, increase income and decrease expenses, especially as college grads. You won't have a lot of opportunity to increase your income maybe in the upfront. Maybe you're just getting an entry-level salary. You're still proving yourself. I know I felt that way. I felt like I couldn't ask for a raise right away. That's understandable. But what you can control in that time is your expenses. Try not to go out and get a new car just because everyone else is. Try not to go out and buy that new living room set because you want to feel fancy. I know exactly how you feel. Just try not to do it. Number 3 is to cut up credit cards. Really what we mean here is just to remove any temptations from your life. So if that's credit cards, fine. Even if it's just coupon emails coming to you every month. I know Old Navy hits me up like every day.
Cabela's for me.
Cabela's, so just unsubscribe from the emails, get the distractions out of your life, and just focus on your goal. 4th is to find like-minded community. And this can be really tricky, but the people you spend your time with, you will become. So definitely find people who are as focused as you are, even if it's not in real life. Go follow some finance influencers on social media. Check out what you're scrolling, what you're seeing on your Instagram feed. Are you seeing more people who are tempting you to go out and buy things and live a certain lifestyle, or are you following people who actually educate you for free on social media? So definitely would recommend that. 5th, you might not be married right now, but it is so important that you get on the same page as your spouse. And if you are married, it may seem like one person, loves to do finances and one person doesn't love to do finances. And I just want to encourage you, that was totally me. I was like, Bryce is crushing my dreams by telling me we're going to pay off our debt. But he took his time with me. He was patient and kind, and he taught me, how to steward our money well. And that has changed the whole trajectory of our life. So I just want to encourage you to be patient with your spouse and prioritize getting on the same page. You don't want that kind of division and stress in your marriage. Lastly, it's a long journey. I know every single month we question, can we actually do this? Can we really, are we really doing this? You have to remember your why, and you have to think about the big picture, because the small picture is you want to go shopping and you want to enjoy your life, but there's a big picture there. So I just would encourage you to remember why you're doing this, to keep you focused on your goal. So that's just about everything we have for you guys. We want to open it up for questions. I have no idea if questions have come through or not, Alex, so you'll have to let us know.
Yeah, so no questions yet in the chat, but what I would recommend is, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask the question, or feel free to utilize the chat feature as well.
It's exactly 30 minutes.
And while we kind of wait for students to come up with questions, I know my immediate question for you two is, what was the first thing you splurged on once you got to the debt-free thing? What was the first thing?
I kind of cheated. We knew we were going to be debt-free in about a month, and Bryce was starting to study for his CPA exam. So he was working 40, 50 hours a week, and then he was coming home and studying for his exams 20 hours a week. And I was like, this dude needs an espresso. I'm going to buy him an espresso
machine.
a machine. Yeah. A fancy coffee machine.
Nice. So that was our first splurge. And then Omaha obviously has a lot of good steakhouses. And
yeah.
So we had a good night. I think we spent more than we usually spent on groceries. So
yeah,
it felt good, and
groceries. We spent more on groceries. Get wild, you two.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
Yeah. No, it's definitely been good. I've been busy with the CPA exams and tax season, super busy right now. So we're looking forward to this summer to travel and kind of do some more things that we're excited to do.
For sure. Well, we did have a couple more questions coming in that I want to address as people are thinking about more, unmuting themselves. Make sure to drop them in the chat, anything like that. The first question came in was just saying kind of what tips do you have for getting on the same page as your spouse, like, and making those weekly meetings not as stressful, but really a chance for growth?
Yeah, well, yeah, we actually talk a lot about this on the Money Well. The whole purpose is to talk about being a unified team with your spouse. So there's a lot of ways to answer that, but ultimately, I think that kind of comes back to like marriage principles. Like you almost leave money out of it altogether, and it's just kind of moving at each other's pace. Like there's usually one person who likes to talk and one person who doesn't like to talk, and one person who gets stressed in conflict and the other one who likes to talk through conflict. Like at times Bryce would want to, when we were talking about something stressful like money, he would want to go think about it and be alone, and I would want to process out loud. But we all bring past experiences about money into the marriage. Like we all bring memories of how our parents dealt with money and, insecurities that we had growing up. And then we try and bring that all together in one partnership. And it's kind of a recipe for disaster in some ways. So it takes a lot of patience and preparation. But I think when you come together with humility and just the goal of wanting to be unified and not wanting to win the other person over, I think that gets you a long ways.
Yeah, I would add just a simple concept of dreaming together, because a lot of the dreaming, I mean, we need finances to have freedom and to pursue some of these dreams. Not all of them, but finances are a big part, and they're in everyone's life. So I think just the part, not even talking about finances right away, just having that romantic time to dream together. And honestly, we went out to eat. Like we got to do like some of our favorite things while we had some more difficult conversations.
Yeah, that's
but with that, it's like each spouse is kind of putting down their own guard, and they're saying like, we're in this together. So I think doing some things you enjoy together while talking about it, and doing it often, because I think if you just do it once every couple months, like you kind of forget, you kind of go back into your own lane where you're comfortable. But if you do it often, you're gonna have it on your heart, on your mind, and you'll take action on it. So
that's really good.
And probably remember that why too. I think that's a point that you guys made in your final thoughts. I think that's exactly right.
I think, and he's the better dreamer. I found when he started asking me questions like, where do you want to be in 10 years? Like I found out that I had a lot of like suppressed dreams because I just thought we would never achieve wealth or we would never be able to do things. I just always thought life would be hard and we would always be in debt. And so when he started asking me those questions, I actually opened up more to wanting to talk about finances because I realized he wanted good things for us and he was trying to lead us well. So if your partner is closed off about money, I would just encourage you, to ask them what they want in life and just be a partner to help them get that.
For sure.
That's our favorite topic, so we could talk about that a lot. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, there are lots of good questions coming in too. So another one that was brought up is something that I'm pretty curious about as well. Could you talk a little bit about some of your favorite budgeting apps? I know you guys, spoiler alert, have something we'll be talking about a little later, but do you have any apps or anything? Like this individual says that they use an Excel spreadsheet that's more hands-on. And then you have like Personal Capital, which is more hands-off. But do you have any favorites? Like I saw a slide with Mint, YNB, those type of things. Do you have anything that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so being old-fashioned, I started out with paper, honestly. It was with a course that we did, but that only lasted, that was more so like just planning. But then I went to Excel for a couple months. But then we spent the majority of our time with it's called Every Dollar. It's Dave Ramsey. It's his app. It's free. And the one reason I like it is because it's electronic, so it's easy to use. But the thing is, you still have to enter everything in there. So like you can buy some of those apps that like everything flows through automatically, which saves you some time. But the point about entering it in is that it actually makes you aware of like, this is what I spent. Like you can't just like go to, go to Target and say, oh, it's gonna figure itself out. Like you actually have to go in and update your budget and say, I overspent at Target. Like I need to like be better about that. So we think that was our best bet, and we didn't explore too many. But that was definitely our favorite.
We also tried, I know there's such thing as envelope method too, where you actually take cash out and you use that to spend. And that's a little bit different than budgeting, but I would just encourage you to like whatever works for you and whatever helps you to track your money and feel good about it, like try anything and everything. We'll get into more specifics about every dollar and I'll kind of show you how it works, but I liked it because it looked pretty, like it looked like a fun app, and part of that was really important to me. I just could look at Excel, but we could both log into every dollar on the same account and you can use it on both your laptop and your phone, which I thought was really convenient as well.
Yes.
So.
And she being the creative, like sometimes she doesn't just like numbers, but like every dollar they have like a pie chart.
Yeah.
And it actually shows like, the percentage of like, this is how much you're spending on groceries, on rent, all the categories. And like, yeah, it's a simple feature, but it does help to say like, we're paying this much towards debt. Like that's awesome. That's exciting. And it makes you motivated.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, trust me, I see the pie chart on my Discover card and I'm like, okay, now I'm terrified about what I'm spending.
Yeah.
I understand that too. Another question that was brought up was that someone had previously mentioned to this individual doing an income-based repayment plan when paying off loans and consolidating some of the loans from the Department of Ed. Would that be a good decision? Do you have any insight? I mean, I'm not expecting like an expert answer, but...
So the repayment plans, it does depend on what type of work you're in, what type of field you're in. I know for us, it wasn't an option. The thing is, I'd rather not. I think they're 10-year repayment plans, and like if you're dead set and sticking in that career, and I think also too, you have to work for a nonprofit. I could be wrong, but. With that, it's like, I don't know if I want that debt to stick with me for 10 years. I mean, if it's a substantial amount, then I think it would be wise to at least follow through with that program and get it repaid eventually. But 10 years is a long time. And for us, we just wanted to get it done in 2 years and move past it, because now we have 8 years to build wealth and do the things we want to do. So
I would say too, when we first graduated, on paper, it didn't look like we had enough to make our payments. Like we were making our payments, but we were technically just getting by. But that's because we were kind of being poor stewards with our money. Like we weren't tracking our grocery spending, and we were just kind of spending here and there. So it didn't feel like we could. But ultimately, I think it comes down to that person's decision on like, do you have enough to make your payments? If you don't, then maybe you should pursue some kind of payment plan that will help you make your payment. But do a little heart check and just make sure that you're truly trying your best.
And I think one of the questions was on consolidating loans. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'll just give you an example. So I don't believe in consolidating loans unless like the interest rates are super high. The reason being is like, for example, if you have 5 loans that are both $1,000 or all $1,000, right? So if you consolidated those into one $5,000 loan, you're not gonna like, it seems way more overwhelming and way more bearing to try to pay off that one 5,000 compared to like these smaller $1,000 ones. Like it's more just like mentally and like, psychologically that like, oh, I can do this $1,000 because it's only going to take me 2 months and then one's gone and then you only have 4 left. So there is, and I've actually read about it, there is something psychologically that if you do consolidate, it actually takes you longer to pay off. So it's just something to be aware of. Obviously, everyone's situation is different, but we'd be happy to answer any questions if you wanted to reach out directly, and we could kind of help you through your own situation.
Yeah, and I think what you bring up is important too, is that some situations, even some careers are different. And so, even using the resources that are available to you at Morningside, talking to financial services, and really talking with those individuals and some others in different capacities would be able to help you through that, in addition to people like Bryce and Bri too. So,
Yeah,
so make sure to gather as much information as possible. That's for sure. Another one that I thought was a good question that I know you both have really taken into account was getting out of college. Would you recommend renting or buying a house or apartment? I know you made some sacrifices there. Could you talk about that experience?
Yeah, well, I will just say, the housing market's crazy right now. So you can never predict, like, whether you're going to get a good buy or it's the right time to buy. Like, you just kind of have to let go of that. Almost a year ago, we actually did a whole little research project and created a video about how much money we saved by renting. And we kind of debunked well, you have equity if you buy a house and that kind of thing. But ultimately, we decided we could live cheaper the first few years, and that the peace of mind of paying off that debt quicker it outweighed the value that we would have in a home. I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer whether renting or buying is right for you. It's more so what kind of purchase is it, which is, there's a lot to think about in terms of how much you're putting down, how much home are you trying to afford. You can make a smart home purchase just about any time, but you can also make a really dumb home purchase. So ultimately, and renting too. Yeah, good point. So I think it just comes down to, like, what is the best thing for me right now? We decided that renting was best, but it's a very personal decision, I would say.
And I would just add, depending on what you're going after the next, the few years after college, for us, we put in a lot of hours for work, and we also are doing things outside of work, and we're studying for different exams and all this other stuff. So, like, the one perk about apartment, like, we don't have to mow grass. We don't have to, do the snow. Like, we actually save a lot of time, but we also save money in the fact that you don't have to pay for the washer if it goes out. You don't have to, pay for new paint because you don't like the old green paint that was in your house, whatever it might be. Like, all these things are already covered. So for us, like, I would not change our decision to rent. One, because we saved money because our rent payment was super low, and two, we saved time. So it's like Bri said, it's definitely depending on your choice on what you want to do, but we're happy with our choice. So.
Great.
Hopefully that helps.
Another question, and again, just keep these questions coming. They're great. So if you have another question, just make sure to drop it in the chat. One last one that we had here in the chat before you get to your next portion was, once you have paid off your debt, how do you go about investing? The 401k was mentioned, but what other ideas? I think you mentioned an app. I forget if it was in reference to your guys' situation, or Bri, if you were talking about your little sister, those types of things. But what would you, if you want to talk about that?
You want me to take it?
You can go ahead.
Well, so I think one of the apps we use is Mint. It's called Mint, and they actually do.
Robinhood.
Oh, Robinhood.
Yeah. We're not a fan.
Anyways, Robinhood, you do a lot of like individual stocks, and that's been popular this last year with like GameStop and all those different stocks. But honestly, what we recommend is, once you get out of debt, we recommend saving 20%, 15 to 20% of your income towards retirement. And this obviously is going to depend on your income level, but what we would do, and what we're actually doing now, is you first get your company match, which you've already been doing through the debt journey. So you get your company match with your 401k. And then what we want to do is we max out, they're called the Roth IRA. It's an individual retirement account, and they both have a capped amount of $6,000 per year.
Explain why we do that.
And we do that because it's a tax advantage vehicle where it grows tax free. So especially now that we're young, and you guys all know what compounding interest is, but the eighth wonder of the world. But what it is is this Roth is all after tax, so you don't get a tax deduction for it, but you put in these funds, they grow tax free, and then all of a sudden you don't have to pay any tax on them when you retire. So that's our next step. And then if you still are under that 20% of your income, then we would say go back to your 401k and try to, and that's like 19,000. So it does take quite a bit to max that out.
Yeah.
But on top of just investing for 401k and IRA, we also think the HSA, which is a health savings account, if you have access to that, you can only contribute up to, I think it's $3,500, but that is actually one of the most powerful tools, especially once you start a family. A lot of you guys you might not even heard of an HSA, or you don't really want to think about kids yet, but
I think if I could summarize kind of some important, if you don't know a lot about investing, I think the most important things are investing is, I think I've heard it described like a hockey stick. Like as you're investing, it's like slow for like 10 or 20 years. And then it just slowly compounds so much that it goes straight up like a hockey stick. And that's really where you start to see the multiplication and compounding, and your money is making money for you, which is how people retire. So the sooner you can start, the sooner you'll be able to reach that. I think when we kind of calculated how much money we need to retire, like at our age group, it was like over $2 million, which hopefully that doesn't overwhelm anybody, but now it's inflation. But it is very important that you start as early as you can and keep it simple. Like he said, start with your 401k, move into a Roth IRA if you don't have that, or if you want to contribute above. But don't get caught up in this stock is doing really well, so I'm going to hop over here and invest a few dollars, and I'm going to hop over here and invest a few dollars. Just be faithful, be consistent, and that's Warren Buffett's method at least, and Warren Buffett's really great at this.
We believe in index funds, which are like the opposite of a stock. So an index fund is, for example, the S&P 500 index fund it's actually a portion of all the 500 companies, and it's just into one stock. So it's not just one stock. If they have a bad day, like you might not get affected because you have all these other companies that are bringing it up as well. So one other thing I was going to add about that is I would just encourage you guys, like, especially after you get done with debt, that you like go into your next step right away. Because, for example, when we were paying off our debt, we would have, times of 25% of our income going towards debt, even more. So instead of like realizing that we have all that money now that we're done, we're actually going to put it to work right away. So it's not like we're missing that money, because it's like we've already been without it. We're not gonna save it all, invest it all, but maybe we just invest like 10% more, and then we have 10% to spend on things we like. So it's just something to be aware of.
That's good.
Yeah, definitely. Like then you can let Bri go to Nebraska Furniture Mart and go a little nuts, right?
We've been there actually. We just bought a couch from there.
We did.
How'd you know?
Right. Well, do you guys want to go into the budget worksheet a little bit?
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, so I just included our handle here if you wanted to follow us. The last thing we had for you was we created a recap worksheet for you. And hopefully too many people didn't jump off and miss this. But if you go to themoneywell.com/Morningside, we created a little sheet here that has that example budget for you. If you're new to budgeting and you just want to see an example of real dollar amounts and what this could look like for you, go ahead and download that. We also just like we already told you about the Every Dollar app, but had a reminder on here and just a visual of what that looks like. We've used that for over a year now, and even now that we're debt free, we haven't stopped. We just love to use it. It's a great way for both of us to plan our money together. And then the last thing on here are some resources that we've taken advantage of throughout this entire journey. They've been super helpful, especially those 2 podcasts at the top, The Ramsey Show, free financial education. Definitely take advantage of that. And The Money Guy is also really awesome. But if you don't like bro talk, I have a few Instagram handles that are for the ladies. So it's all good stuff. That's everything we have for you guys.
Great. Well, and if you guys want to go back one slide, just so they can see some of that contact information, the website, the handle, definitely ways. And then that's probably a good way for them to reach out to you too. If they have any other direct question, can they just shoot you a DM or something?
Yeah, most people, we get tons of questions in the DMs, just everything from like really personal finance situations to broad philosophical questions about money. Even if we don't have the answer, we'll point you to someone who does. So
yes.
Well, this would be a great time. If anyone has any last questions before we let them go, make sure to drop it in the chat. One question that I had for you guys that I think might be really applicable for some individuals that are on this call specifically. Looking back at it now, is there anything do you think you wish you would have done a little bit more while you were a student? Because I think like some of these are students that are on this call.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you could have got a jump on it earlier?
Ooh. We had very different college experiences. So I had 3 or 4 jobs, and Bryce was, being a baller, dunking on people. So he didn't work. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, like I think I don't know. I put a lot of pressure on myself to like pay all my bills and stuff, and that was great in college. But a lot of times I wish I would have had the experience that Bryce did. So I think like, rather than putting pressure on yourself to, invest now or pay off your debt now, like enjoy the experiences that you have, because it is a very short time that you're in school. But I think, like I said earlier, that really big moment is just prepare that you're going to have all kinds of temptations to spend tons of money once you graduate and you get your first salary. So just making the decision now that you're going to be as responsible as you can, even now while you're in school, but as soon as you graduate, by putting your money to work for you instead of getting you into binds with credit cards and things like that. I would just encourage you in that way, but you may have a different perspective.
Honestly, I wouldn't change much about mine. Like, yes, I did come out with some debt, but I think college is about the experience, and it is about growing connections. And but I think I took my education seriously, and I think that would be my biggest thing, is to take your education seriously, because you are paying money for it. Like, you might not feel like you are, because it's just going on a loan that you don't see for a couple of years, but that education is what is going to make you money so that you can pay it back. So I think as long as you're taking it seriously, you're going towards something that you're passionate about. And again, when we talk about the why, it's not just money. It's not like, yeah, we're going to do this so we can make 50,000, 100,000 a year, whatever it might be. We're doing this because we're passionate about it. And it's going to drive us all, 40 years or however many years we work.
Right. And now I feel like I should have said something about my education too. But just when I mentioned I had 3 or 4 jobs, I also did, I think, 4 internships while I was at Morningside with Stacy's help and John Colbo's help. They were just like, I took advantage of relationships that I had at Morningside to get those internships, which then actually landed me my dream job. And now I'm in a position that I wasn't expecting to be in for another 5 or 6 years. So ultimately, that's helped us tremendously with, income increasing quickly and things like that. So I would just encourage you to get those internships if it applies to your career, make any connections you can, and get as much real world experience before you graduate.
And I did have a job. She didn't
Oh,
know.
you did.
I mowed in the summer, and I actually did bring in quite a bit of cash, but I didn't even think about like, what I should do with it. I just thought this is fun to spend, like, buy some whatever. But but I should have, and that's what I would encourage you guys with. If you do have a summer job, like, why not like put like, maybe it's $500, maybe it's 1,000 or even more, that like you're not actually going to miss, but you could actually make a dent in your student loan. You could pay off one of your small loans, or you could like just put it into a savings account, whatever it might be. But I think that would have been one thing I would have done differently.
No, I think that's a perfect answer. And I didn't know which direction you would take it. I just found myself asking myself, what I wish maybe I would have done. And I think that the point that you made that's really important that I definitely would take away too is thinking about investing in your future, and really rather than focusing on maybe paying something off or working more hours, the more internships, experience, better grades, all of those things that you can do, maybe you land a better job, what I mean? And you invested in that future. And because you landed the better job, you're in a better position to pay off that debt. So
Exactly.
Awesome.
I think that's
well said.
That's great. I think that's a great takeaway and a great thing to leave off on. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I really want to thank not only the students for really jumping in and having some good questions, but also Bryce, Bri, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been great connecting with you and listening to this advice and hearing about your journey. We're really proud of you at Morningside, and so we're thankful that you were able to join us tonight. So
yeah, we're so grateful.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you to all the students who hung on with us as we rambled about our lives.
Yeah. But again, like I mentioned before, everyone has a different situation with money. So it's hard to just like try to find your answer on the internet because like your situation is different. So I would just leave with, don't be afraid to reach out. I've been in that spot where I was kind of unaware of like who I should talk to and whatnot. And I just want to say like, we're here for you guys.
Morningside's here for you.
Yeah. So like if you guys ever have a question, we'll be happy to help you out.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, like we'll keep it confidential and we'll be there for you guys. So
for sure. And we'll make sure to share those resources as well. We'll send out that attachment that you have and make sure any links or anything like that, as well as have this recording up in case anyone wants to share it along. So thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Stacy.